The morning mist hung low over Westfield Cemetery. The fog wrapped itself around marble headstones like forgotten prayers. A cold breeze whispered through the ancient oak trees as soft light spilled across the ground. A silver Bentley rolled to a stop near the gate, quiet as a sigh. The door opened, and Victoria stepped out. Her black heels clicked against the damp stone path, sharp and steady, like a ticking clock. She wore a black Chanel suit, her silver hair pulled back into a tight knot that hadn't moved in years. At 62, she was elegance wrapped in steel. People respected her. Some feared her, but no one ever saw her cry. She hadn't been here in months. Her son, Michael, had been gone for 3 years now. And though she still told herself he'd left nothing but trouble behind, debts, dropped dreams, and disappointments in part, of her heart still bled, quietly, every day. She took the familiar path around the mausoleum, eyes fixed ahead. She didn't need to look for the grave. She knew exactly where it was. Simple, modest, just a headstone with a name and dates. Michael. James Ashworth, 1985, minus 2021, beloved son. That was all she'd allowed. But when she turned the corner, she stopped cold. Someone was already there. A young woman knelt beside Michael's grave. Her uniform of faded blue waitress dress was damp from the wet grass. Her shoulders shook with quiet sobs, and her hands covered her face. Beside her sat a small boy, maybe 4 years old, placing yellow dandelions carefully in a row at the base of the stone. His skin was warm brown, and his eyes were strikingly green. For a moment, Victoria just stared. She didn't move. She didn't speak. The boy was humming softly. A tune she couldn't place. Gentle, familiar. Then she blinked. The spell broke, and the sharp edge of her voice cut the silence. Excuse me. The woman looked up fast, eyes wide, cheeks wet with tears. She couldn't have been more than 25. High cheekbones. Tired eyes. She looked startled, embarrassed, but she didn't move right away. I'm sorry, the woman said, quickly pulling the child close. You were just leaving, Victoria finished, her voice cold. The woman stood, brushing her hands against her skirt. Yes, of course, we didn't mean to cause any trouble. Victoria narrowed her eyes. This is a private family plot. Whatever story you're selling, you need to do it somewhere else. I'm not selling anything, the woman said quietly, holding the child's hand tight. Victoria took a step closer. Her heels sank slightly in the wet ground, but her stare didn't waver. People come here looking for sympathy, hoping grief will make others generous. You don't belong here. The boy tugged at the woman's sleeve. Mama, he whispered. Why is the mean lady yelling? Victoria froze, the voice. That slight rasp, the way he tilted his head, it was nothing. A trick of the mind. Grief did strange things, still. Her heart gave a strange twist. I'm sorry, the woman said again, her voice more firm this time. But we do have a reason to be here, Victoria scoffed. Really? You have a reason to be at my son's grave? The woman took a breath, her eyes locked on Victoria's. Yes, I knew him. Victoria's fingers tightened around her purse. You knew Michael? She asked, carefully. I did, the woman said, her voice steady now. He was kind. He laughed even when he was hurting. He loved jazz music and bad horror movies. He put too much sugar in his coffee, said life was bitter enough already. Victoria's breath caught. Those were not things you could read in a newspaper. Those were private, personal. You're lying. She whispered. The woman shook her head. He had a scar on his left hand from a broken window. He tried to fix himself. He didn't want to ask you for money. He drove an old Honda he refused to replace. The child bent down again, carefully placing another dandelion on the grave. I loved him, the woman said. And he loved me. Victoria took a step back. Her heart was pounding. Her mind raced. And this? The woman said softly, placing her hand on the boy's back. This is Tommy, Michael's son, your grandson. The world tilted. Victoria stared. Really stared. The boy looked up at her, those eyes. That mouth. That frown. Something inside her cracked out, and for the first time in years, Victoria Ashworth forgot how to breathe. Victoria couldn't speak. The boy stared up at her with those green eyes. Michael's eyes. Eyes that had once laughed in her kitchen, rolled during teenage arguments, narrowed when he was deep in thought. Now they looked back at her from the face of a child she had never seen before. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. I don't understand. She finally managed. The young woman, still holding the boy close, didn't flinch. His name is Tommy, she said. Thomas Michael. Victoria's mind scrambled for logic, for facts, for something that could explain what she was hearing without it being real. No, she said firmly, as if saying it out loud could change the truth. Michael never mentioned you. He never mentioned a child. The woman looked at the ground. He wanted to. He almost did. Victoria took another step back, reaching for the stone bench behind her. She sat down, suddenly feeling every one of her 62 years. This wasn't happening. It couldn't be happening. You're trying to trick me, she said, her voice shaking but cold. This is a scam. You think you can show up here with a child and a story and walk away with money? I don't want your money, the woman said, calm but tired. I've never wanted anything from you. Then what are you doing here? Victoria snapped. Why now? I've been coming for 3 years, she said, since the funeral. That's not possible, Victoria said. I've never seen you. The woman gave a sad smile. Because you only come once every few months. You come early, stay 20 minutes, and leave. It was true. Victoria had made her visits brief, scheduled between board meetings and charity events. She had never stayed long enough to notice anyone else. We come almost every Sunday. The woman continued. Tommy picks dandelions along the fence. Says they're happy flowers. We tell Michael stories. Sometimes we just sit and talk. Victoria couldn't believe what she was hearing. You brought a child here every week for 3 years. I wanted him to know his father, she said simply. Even if he can't see him. Victoria studied her. This woman didn't have polished nails or expensive clothes. Her shoes were worn. Her coat was too thin for the weather. But there was something unbreakable in her voice. And what does he know about Michael? Victoria asked, her tone still sharp. The woman looked down at Tommy, who was now arranging the dandelions into a circle. He knows his daddy liked music with too many instruments. That he once tried to build a bookshelf and nailed it to the floor by accident. That he made pancakes with chocolate chips and called them smile cakes. That he called him Champ. That he used to hum jazz when he rocked him to sleep. Victoria's throat tightened. Her eyes burned, but she refused to let the tears come. Those details were too real. To Michael. Still, she fought it. He didn't tell me about you, she said, her voice now just a whisper. He would have told me. The woman Maya, though Victoria didn't know that yet, hesitated. Then she said, would he? Victoria looked at her sharply. Would he have told the mother who didn't come to his graduation when he switched majors? The one who said he was throwing his life away when he left law school? The one who didn't return his calls when he said he wanted to do something different with his life? Victoria turned her face away. The words hit like cold water. Maya continued, gently but firmly. He wanted to tell you. He was scared to. He was always trying to earn your approval. Always trying to prove something. The silence was heavy, only the wind moved, stirring leaves across the graves. I didn't abandon him, Victoria said, but even to herself, it didn't sound true. No, Maya agreed. You didn't, but you stopped showing up for him. And he stopped expecting you. 2. Tommy looked up from his flowers. Mama, is she really my grandma? Victoria flinched. That voice again. That little rasp. Michael had sounded just like that when he was sick at 6 years old, curled in her lap with a fever, whispering, Mama, can I stay home today? Victoria stared at the boy. She could see it now. the curve of his cheek. The stubbornness in his eyes. The way he watched, like he understood more than a child should. I don't know, Victoria said softly. Tommy stood and walked closer. He held out a dandelion. She looks like Grandma in the pictures, right, Mama? Maya didn't answer. Victoria looked at the flower. Her perfectly manicured hand didn't move. I don't know what to do with this, she admitted. You just take it, Tommy said. That's all. Victoria's hand reached out, slowly, unsure, and closed around the stem. The dandelion felt light in her palm. Fragile. Like something that shouldn't last. Long but still held beauty. She looked at Maya, then at Tommy. Nothing about this was expected. Nothing about it was part of her plan, but for the first time, she wasn't sure if that was a bad thing. The wind picked up again, rustling the leaves, the flowers, and the edges of an old memory she wasn't ready to face. She would have to choose control or connection, but not both. Not this time. Victoria sat in silence, the dandelion still resting in her hand. It trembled slightly, just like her fingers. Her throat ached, but no words came. Tommy had returned to his place near the grave, carefully adding the flower to his ring of yellow, as if it were the most sacred thing in the world. The air was quiet, but something loud was breaking inside her. I want to believe you, Victoria finally said, her voice low, like she was confessing a secret. But believing you means admitting I failed him? Maya didn't answer right away. She crouched down beside her son and helped him straighten one of the flowers that had fallen sideways. Sometimes, Maya said softly, believing someone else means forgiving yourself first. Victoria turned her face away again, ashamed of the tears pressing behind her eyes. If you're telling the truth, she said, then prove it. Maya stood up, quietly opened her bag, and pulled out a small, worn-out digital camera, the kind no one used anymore. Its silver edges were scratched, its screen faded, but it had been cared for. She held it out. Michael gave me this. He said if anything ever happened to him, and I had to face you alone, I should show you these. Victoria took the camera with both hands, unsure what she was about to see. Her thumb hovered over the button before she clicked. The screen lit up, showing a photo of a hospital room. Maya was lying in a hospital bed, her face tired but glowing. In her arms, a tiny baby wrapped in blue. And next to them, Michael, his smile wide, pure, full of life, almost made Victoria drop the camera. It was a smile she hadn't seen since he was a teenager. Her heart cracked. That's the day Tommy was born, Maya said. He took that picture himself. Victoria clicked to the next photo, then the next. Birthday parties, walks in the park. Michael brushing flour off Tommy's nose in a messy kitchen. Michael asleep on the couch with the child curled into his side. Michael looking at Tommy like he was his entire world. Each photo cut deeper, each one peeled away the layers she had built for protection. She swallowed hard. He looks happy. He was, Maya said. Scared, broke most of the time. But happy. Victoria clicked again. The photos didn't stop. Michael had documented everything, first steps, first laugh, first tooth. He had loved this boy deeply. He had been present. He had been more of a father than Victoria ever thought possible. I had no idea, she whispered. Maya reached into her bag again and pulled out a manila envelope creased, a little torn at the edges, but carefully taped together. There's more, she said. These were supposed to be for you. Victoria opened the flap and froze. Inside were letters, dozens of them, each one handwritten, each one dated. The earliest one was from 3 years ago, the day after Tommy was born. She unfolded it with trembling hands. Mom, I don't know if you'll ever read this. I'm writing it anyway. I have a son. His name is Thomas Michael Ashworth. He's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Victoria couldn't keep reading. Her vision blurred. Her fingers clenched around the page. Why didn't he send them? she asked, her voice breaking. Maya hesitated. He was going to, he just needed to feel like he was worthy first. Worthy of what? Of your love? Victoria's chest felt tight, as if someone had taken a fist and pushed it straight through her ribs. He thought if he could show you he was a good father, you'd be proud of him, Maya continued. He said you only respected success, not softness. He wanted to prove he could be both. Victoria looked back at the letter in her hands. ... I know I disappointed you. I know I made choices you couldn't support. But holding this little boy, I feel like I finally found the part of myself you always wanted me to discover. I'm just scared you'll never get to see it. She closed her eyes, but the words followed her. I was hard on him, she admitted, her voice quiet. I thought if I pushed him, he'd be better. Stronger, prepared. Maya nodded slowly. You didn't want to lose him? Victoria shook her head. But I did anyway. Tommy, unaware of the weight around him, came over, holding a small rock shaped like a heart. Daddy said love is a strong thing, he said, offering it to her. He said it never goes away, even when you're sad. Victoria took the rock, her hand trembling. He told you that. Tommy nodded proudly. Every night before bed. The moment hit her so hard, she couldn't breathe. This child Michael's child was offering her a chance. A bridge back to something she thought was lost forever. A small voice inside whispered, Don't let this slip away again. I want to know him, Victoria said suddenly. Not just from photos. Not just from letters. I want to know the man he became, the father he was. I want to know everything. Maya watched her closely, unsure if this was a test. I can tell you, she said softly, if you're ready to listen. Victoria nodded. I think I'm ready. And just like that, something shifted. The distance between them didn't vanish, but it thinned. Enough to take one step forward. And that step changed everything. Victoria sat on the stone bench, the envelope of letters resting on her lap, the rock heart in one hand and a silence in the air that felt different now. It was no longer filled with accusation or suspicion. It was heavy with history, one she'd never known she was part of. Maya remained standing, unsure whether to speak again or give the woman space. Tommy wandered a few steps away, chasing a squirrel that darted behind a row of stones, giggling softly. The sound reminded Victoria of a younger Michael. Before the boardroom arguments, before the disappointments, before law school became a battleground between ambition and identity. She turned to Maya, eyes glistening but steady now. Why didn't he just show up one day? Why didn't he bring Tommy and make me see? Maya gave a soft smile, one that held pain and patience. He tried, she said, many times. He used to stand outside your building, rehearsing what he'd say. Victoria's breath caught. He was there. He never made it past the lobby, Maya said. The security guards were under instructions not to let him up. Victoria closed her eyes. Her assistant, her lawyer, her building's policies, all meant to protect her peace. All had kept her son out. He didn't think he belonged in your world anymore, Maya continued, but he never stopped hoping. That's why he wrote the letters. That's why he recorded videos, saved pictures, documented everything. Because he believed someday you'd want to know. Victoria nodded slowly, the weight of that truth settling on her shoulders. Just then, the sound of tires crunching gravel broke the stillness. Victoria turned her head. A black SUV pulled into the cemetery. The driver's door opened, and a man in a tailored gray suit stepped out, flanked by 2 security guards in black. Victoria's eyes narrowed. It was Richard Morrison, her personal attorney of 15 years. His walk was brisk, confident, calculated. The kind of man who managed empires and made people disappear with paperwork. Mrs. Ashworth, he greeted, his tone polite but laced with concern. I received your call about an incident at your son's grave. Victoria blinked. What call? The one reporting a disturbance, Richard said. A woman and child creating a scene. We assumed she was attempting to make a fraudulent claim against the Ashworth estate. I took the liberty of bringing assistance. Maya's face went pale. One of the security guards stepped forward slightly, eyes fixed on her. Victoria stood slowly. I didn't make that call, she said. Then it must have been someone on your team, Richard replied. We've been monitoring your security feeds. This woman has been making repeated visits to your son's grave. Naturally, we flagged. You've been watching my son's grave? Victoria asked, her voice sharp now. For your safety, Richard said, and to prevent exploitation. Maya instinctively moved in front of Tommy, wrapping an arm around him. The little boy looked up, sensing the change in the air. Victoria stepped between them. Richard, she said calmly, you need to stop. Now, he frowned. Mrs. Ashworth, I understand emotions are high, but these situations can be dangerous. We need to verify this woman's identity and intentions. You think she's here for money? Victoria asked. Richard didn't answer directly. I think we should be cautious. That child could be anyone's. People invent stories for inheritance all the time. Maya's shoulders tightened. Her eyes locked on the lawyer. She didn't speak, but her silence was screaming. I said stop. Victoria repeated. Double quotes, Mrs. Ashworth. Please think carefully. This woman is a stranger. She's not part of your family. She is, Victoria said, and so is he. The words hit the air like a thunderclap. Richard went silent. The guards froze. Maya stared at Victoria, stunned. She is my son's partner, Victoria said, her voice steady now. And that boy Tommy is my grandson. Ma'am, you had me watched, she continued, ignoring him. You tracked grieving visitors. You launched legal action without my permission. You tried to remove my grandson from a cemetery plot that belongs to my family. She took a slow breath. You're fired, Richard blinked. What? You heard me, she said. Fired. Immediately. Leave. And if you contact me again, I'll have you removed by the authorities. Richard looked at the security guards for support, but they knew the real power in the room. They stepped aside. Mia's body relaxed just slightly. Her grip on Tommy loosened. Richard stared at Victoria for a long moment, but there was nothing left to say. With quiet fury, he turned, walked back to the SUV, and drove away. The cemetery was silent again. Victoria let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. She turned to Maya. I didn't know they were watching you. I figured someone was, Maya said. You don't grow up the way I did and not learn. When you're being followed. I'm sorry, Victoria said. For all of it, Maya gave a small nod. You didn't know. Victoria looked down at Tommy, who was now playing with the heart-shaped rock near the base of the headstone. Again, unfazed by the adult drama. I want to do this differently, Victoria said. From here on, I don't want fear or power to get in the way anymore. Maya's eyes searched hers. Are you sure? Victoria nodded. Michael didn't get a second chance, but maybe I do. She looked at her son's grave, a headstone. She had once insisted be small and quiet now. Looked like the start of something bigger, not a monument, but a door. And Victoria was finally ready to walk through it. The next morning, Victoria stood in her kitchen, an elegant space with spotless marble counters, untouched appliances, and a coffee machine she'd never learned to use. For years, this kitchen had served more as a showroom than a place to cook. She'd always taken her meals in restaurants or boardrooms. Her housekeeper kept it shining, but it had never smelled of food, never heard the sound of laughter. Now it did. A small hand reached up and tugged gently at the edge of her blouse. Can I crack the eggs, Grandma? Victoria looked down into the eager eyes of her grandson Tommy. His face was already dusted with flour, his sleeves rolled up. His enthusiasm was messy, loud, and completely disarming. I suppose we'll need a bowl first, she said, crouching beside him. Do you know where they are? He grinned. Mama showed me yesterday. From the other side of the counter, Maya smiled. She wore a simple apron and had already lined up the ingredients: flour, sugar, butter. Her movements in the kitchen were confident, practiced, like someone who had learned not from books, but from life. Victoria had invited them to stay in the apartment above her garage. Maya had hesitated at first, but the rent-free space gave them stability while still honoring her independence. It wasn't charity, it was family. Something new, something fragile, but something real. Tommy found the bowl and placed it on the counter like he was presenting a treasure. Eggs next, he declared. Victoria picked up one of the brown-shelled eggs, holding it awkwardly. Like this, Maya said gently, stepping. And beside her, she demonstrated on the edge of the bowl, cracking the shell with a quick, sure movement. Then pull it apart with your thumbs. Victoria tried, but the first egg broke. 2 hard shell fragments dropped into the bowl. Tommy giggled. It's okay, Grandma. Mama says messes are part of learning. Victoria smiled, wiping her hands. Messes weren't allowed in this house before. Maya said nothing, but there was kindness in her eyes. Forgiveness without words. They continued together, mixing ingredients, measuring, making mistakes. The kitchen filled with warmth and the smell of vanilla. When the cookies were finally in the oven, Tommy ran off to the living room, chasing his toy spaceship. Victoria stood beside Maya at the sink, rinsing flour off her hands. I never thought I'd be here, she said softly. Making cookies with my grandson. Learning how to cook from my sons? From you? Maya glanced at her, wiping a dish. Neither did I, honestly. I thought you'd never speak to us again. I was wrong about so many things, Victoria admitted. I thought Michael needed structure. That if I could push him hard enough, he'd succeed. But I see now. He just needed love, Maya nodded. He said that once. That he didn't need you to change him, just to see him. Victoria looked down. Her hands trembled slightly. I thought love was something you earned. I never knew it was something you were supposed to give. Behind them, the oven timer dinged. Tommy came running in. Cookies? Victoria laughed, really laughed, for the first time in what felt like years. Let's hope they taste better than they look. They pulled the tray out together. The cookies were uneven, some too dark, some still gooey. But when Tommy bit into one, his face lit up. These are the best cookies ever, he announced. They're a little soft in the middle, Victoria said, inspecting hers. So was Michael, Maya said quietly. That's what made him special, Victoria paused mid-bite. She hadn't thought of her son that way before. Soft. Not weak. Not flawed. Just human. Later that evening, Victoria sat at the edge of her bed, holding one of Michael's letters. She had read it already, but tonight she read it again. The paper was worn at the edges. The ink smudged slightly where her tears had touched it the night before. Mom, I hope someday you read this and smile instead of cry. I hope you see that everything I learned about love, I learned from you, even the hard parts. I want you to meet Maya. She's brave and kind. She tells the truth even when it's hard. She made me better. And I want you to meet Tommy. He's loud and curious and wild and good, just like I used to be. I want him to know you. Not the businesswoman, not the legend. Just you, Mom. The woman who raised me. The woman who deep down I always believed could love without limits. Victoria wiped her eyes and looked at the framed photo now sitting on her bedside table. It was from earlier that day, Tommy standing on a chair, proudly holding up a crooked cookie, Maya laughing behind him. Victoria's arm was around both of them. She hadn't planned to keep that photo, but it felt right. Real. Something worth remembering. The next morning, she found herself up before sunrise. The house was quiet. The smell of flour still lingered in the air. She walked into the kitchen and opened the cabinet, pulling down ingredients without help. She cracked 2 eggs, still clumsy, but getting better. She didn't need to be perfect anymore. She just needed to be present. And that? She Could do. It had been almost 6 months. 6 months since Victoria had first seen a stranger crying at her son's grave. 6 months since she'd learned she had a grandson. 6 months since everything she thought she knew about love, family, and control had cracked open. Now, the house she once kept spotless and cold felt like a home that had learned how to breathe. There were tiny fingerprints on the refrigerator door. Crayon scribbles on the edge of the dining table, Tommy's secret art zone. And in the living room, there was always something out of place. A toy spaceship under the couch. A dinosaur tucked beside the throw pillows. Victoria didn't mind. She used to call such things clutter. Now she called them signs of life. That morning, she sat at the breakfast table sipping her tea, watching Maya and Tommy through the kitchen doorway. Maya was packing his school lunch while Tommy sat on a stool, swinging his legs and talking nonstop about planets. "Mama," he said, his voice full of excitement, "did you know Jupiter has 79 moons? That's more than Grandma has." "Shoes," Maya laughed. "Let's not say that too loud, sweetheart." Victoria smiled behind her teacup. She had once cared about being impressive. Now she cared about being included. She cleared her throat and stood. "Tommy, what would you say if Grandma picked you up from school today?" Tommy gasped like he'd just been handed a spaceship. "Really?" "Really," Victoria nodded. "Can we get cookies after?" "We can try, but only if you don't tell your mom how many we eat." Tommy's grin stretched across his whole face. As Maya helped him put on his coat, she glanced at Victoria with a warmth that had grown over time. They weren't best friends. They weren't always comfortable. But they were building something real, stone by stone, moment by moment. After Tommy had skipped off to the school van, Maya stayed behind to clear the table. "You don't have to do that," Victoria said, reaching for the plates. "I like to," Maya replied. "And besides, this is the one room in the house where I still feel useful." Victoria raised an eyebrow. "You've done more for this home than any decorator ever did. It was beautiful before. But now it's alive." Maya smiled faintly. "That's because you let us in." Victoria hesitated before speaking again. "I was thinking of asking you something. Something more official." Maya looked up from the dishes, cautious but curious. "I want to start a foundation," Victoria said. "Something in Michael's name, for single mothers like you who are trying to do it all. Scholarships, housing support, childcare." Maya's eyes widened. That's a big step." "I know," Victoria nodded, "but I've spent years funding things that didn't matter. Golf tournaments, society dinners. This feels like something he would have been proud of." Maya didn't respond right away. She placed the last plate on the drying rack and wiped her hands. "You're not trying to buy forgiveness, are you?" The question wasn't cruel. It was honest. Victoria appreciated that more than she could say. "No," she said softly. "I'm trying to plant something that grows, something rooted in him. In the son I wish I had known better. In the woman he loved, in the child he left behind." Maya nodded slowly. "Then yes, I'd be honored to help." They sat down at the kitchen table together and for the first time began making plans not just for tomorrow, but for the years ahead. Later that afternoon, Victoria drove alone to the cemetery. She carried a small box tucked under her arm. The air was crisp, the ground still soft from last night's rain. She walked the path she once dreaded and reached the grave with steady steps. She knelt down. For a while, she said nothing. She just sat with the silence. Then she opened the box and took out a photo. It was the picture of her, Maya and Tommy, McKitchen flour everywhere, cookies half burnt, and all of them laughing. She placed it in a weather-safe frame and leaned it gently against the headstone. "I thought legacy was money," she said aloud, her voice catching in the wind. "But I see now, Michael, it's love. It's what you leave in the hearts of people. It's the stories, the warmth, the second chances." She wiped a tear from her cheek. "I miss so many of your stories. But I'm here now. and I'm listening every day. As she stood to leave, a gust of wind blew a yellow dandelion across the grass dot. It landed at her feet. She smiled, bent down and picked it up, placing it gently on the grave, next to the photo. Then she whispered, "Thank you for sending them to me." When she turned to go, she didn't feel alone. She felt seen. She felt forgiven. She felt ready. Because for the first time in her life, Victoria Ashworth wasn't walking away from something. She was walking toward it. 6 months after the day Victoria met Maya and Tommy at Michael's grave, her life looked nothing like it once had. The boardroom meetings were fewer. The sharp suits remained, but they now came with softer eyes and warmer hands. Her schedule still included charity events and business reviews, but tucked in between were school pickups, cookie afternoons, foundation calls, and bedtime stories. She had never imagined herself reading. Victoria had spent a lifetime building empires and protecting legacies. She drafted airtight contracts, pored over balance sheets, and stood behind a fortress of expectations. But nothing had prepared her for bedtime with a 4-year-old who insisted on hearing the story about how his daddy once glued a bookshelf to the carpet by accident. That had become their favorite story. Every night, Victoria sat beside Tommy's small bed in the upstairs apartment, reading from a little notebook filled with memories Maya had written down about Michael. Tommy would listen wide-eyed. Sometimes he'd ask questions. Other times he'd fall asleep halfway through, clutching his dandelion print blanket. Tonight was different. Tonight, he stayed awake the whole time. "Grandma," he said as she closed the notebook, "do you think Daddy can hear us when we talk about him?" Victoria paused, then nodded gently. "I do. He looks serious, even when I'm silly." "Especially when you're silly," she smiled. Tommy grinned and leaned back on his pillow. "Good, 'cause I told him that you burnt the cookies again." Victoria laughed. "Traitor." "You're getting better, though," he added, his voice already beginning to drift into sleep. Victoria brushed a strand of hair off his forehead. "So are you." As Tommy's breathing deepened and the room quieted, she sat there a little longer, watching him, memorizing him. This boy who carried pieces of her son and somehow had unlocked the pieces of herself she kept hidden for decades. Downstairs, Maya was reading in the kitchen. The once pristine white walls now had a calendar, filled with school reminders, field trip dates, and colorful magnets spelling Tommy's home. When Victoria joined her, Maya looked up. "He is asleep." "Out like a light," Victoria replied. She sat across from her, folding her hands. "The paperwork's all done." "The foundation launches next week." Maya nodded. "I saw the website today. It's beautiful." "I named it after both of you," Victoria said. "You and Tommy. You gave me something to live for again." Maya smiled faintly. "You gave us something too. You gave us a chance to be seen." Victoria exhaled. Slowly. "I used to think strength was control. Now I think it's something else." "What is it?" She looked up. "I think it's love. The kind that stays, even when it's hard. The kind that listens, even when it doesn't understand." Maya nodded. "That's what Michael had. He always loved hard." Victoria's eyes misted. "He tried to teach me, I just didn't hear him in time." Maya reached across the table. "You heard him. Maybe later than he hoped, but you heard him." Victoria squeezed her hand. That night, alone in her study, Victoria opened the leather-bound book of Michael's letters once again. The final one was dated 3 days before the crash. She had read it dozens of times. Tonight, she read it aloud. "Mom, I've been thinking a lot about forgiveness. Not just forgiving others, but forgiving ourselves. I think I've finally forgiven myself for not being the son you wanted. And I think I'm ready to forgive you for not being the mother I needed. We both did our best. Sometimes our best was messy. But it was still love, wasn't it? Tomorrow, I'm going to call you. I'm going to tell you about Maya and about Tommy. I'm going to ask you to be part of their lives, not because I need your approval, but because I want you to know this happiness. I want you to see that the love you gave me, even the hard love, helped me build something beautiful. If you say yes, I promise I'll give you every Sunday for the rest of my life. Victoria closed the book slowly, her fingers resting on the page. It wasn't lost on her that he had tried to call, that she hadn't answered, but she had Sundays now. With Tommy, with Maya, and, in a way, with Michael too. The following weekend, they went to the cemetery again. The three of them, Victoria, Maya, and Tommy. It had become a tradition. Tommy ran ahead with a bundle of dandelions in his hands. Careful. Maya called, but she was smiling. Victoria walked behind them, slower, but content. The path that once felt like a weight now felt like a bridge. When they reached the grave, Tommy laid the flowers down, then turned to his grandmother. Tell Daddy a story, he said. Victoria crouched beside him. Her knees ached, but her heart felt light. She began. Once, when your daddy was 7, he tried to turn our swimming pool into a dinosaur park. And the story flowed, simple, funny, human. As they stood to leave, Maya leaned close. He would have loved this. I think he does, Victoria said. I think he's with us. They walked away together, the wind soft, the sky warm. Back home, later that night, Victoria sat in her living room surrounded by light photos of Michael, drawings by Tommy, books with cracked spines and half-used crayons. It wasn't the future she had planned, but it was the life she had been given. A life full of messes, of cookies that burned, of laughter and bedtime stories. A life born from grief but nurtured by forgiveness. She looked out the window at the stars, one hand on her heart. I heard you, Michael, she whispered, and I'm still listening.